the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. If you are new here, welcome. It's always great to have new listeners to this show. Make sure that you follow on social media, that is Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. And also a gentle reminder that you can subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, be it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Podchaser. If you're a regular listener, as usual, I'm so happy to have you back. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now, let's get into today's episode. My guest today is Lonwabo, born and bred in South Africa. In this episode, we learned that he always knew he wanted to be a scientist, but wasn't quite sure what field he wanted to work in. His physics teacher and his mother, who did agriculture, were the two most influential people in his life. With this influence, in university, he began a degree in applied chemistry, but quickly realized that this was not for him. He later changed his major to soil science and hydrology. He chose to specialize in soil science as a postgraduate student. Currently, his master's research is focused on the development of farm typologies and the assessment of their fertility gradients and nutrient variation in smallholder farmers in KwaZulu-Natal. Lonwabo tells us more about this research and its importance. Further, Lonwabo gets candid and discusses how he failed a module during his undergrad years and the important lessons that he learned since then that have helped him to get where he is in his academic journey. Let's tune in and we can hear about all of this and so much more. Let's go. Hi, Lonwabo. Welcome to the show.
Hi, and with an E. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's great to have you on today and for us to just get to know more about you. Now, before we get into everything, give us a brief introduction. Who is Lonwabo? Where are you from? Where are you currently based? And in brief, what are you currently doing?
Okay, Lonwabo is as a rural boy from Umzimkhulu in South Africa, KZN, yes. And right now, I'm currently based in Pinetown, doing some internship for another company. So because they haven't paid, I will not mention any name. Yes,
okay.
Yes, yeah. And I'm currently also doing my master's in soil sciences at the University of KwaZulu-Natal.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so we want to talk about that other company then, because
yes, yeah. They need to pay. Then
we can plug them nicely that I work here.
Yeah.
No, I like what you're doing. Okay, so before we get into the thing that we can talk about, the science, it's always important for us to actually hear the fact that you're more than just a scientist. In fact, you are a lover of all things art, which is a contrast to, when people think of a scientist. So tell me more about that.
I think art calms me down, I may say. I think art is my therapy. Yeah. It's just my therapy because if I'm not in the lab, if I'm not reading those science articles, it's either I'm attending poetry sessions, and I also enjoy looking and viewing paintings. So that's how I distress, if I may say so.
Wow. So the left and the right brain work equally for you.
I would like, yeah, you can say so.
No, that's good. It's always good to have a nice balance. Like you said, that the lab and papers and journals, the mind can be like, it's too much now, So at least
it can be too much.
At least you've got that nice balance. So do you just listen to poetry, or is it something that you actually write? And even with the painting, do you physically do the thing, or you just enjoy, appreciate it?
Funny thing is, I can't even do any of those. Not that I don't, I can't. The talent for that is not there, but I love art. So I'm just good at listening and getting some inspiration from it. Then that's it. No, I don't participate in it in any way.
Okay. it's good. One can just be appreciative of all of that, which is fine. So we now know that the art thing is not your thing. So clearly, the book thing, the science thing, is the thing. So now you said in your intro that you are a rural boy. So how do you then get into the science? How does that happen for you rather? Was it some influences? Take us back to the very beginning now.
No, I would say my physics teacher in high school, Mr. Nyatongo, he was very influential in a way that I get to fall in love with science, right? And also my mom participated more in agriculture. So when well, at that time I didn't actually love going to the garden, but I was actually I had to. So but as time goes on and I grow older, then I had that fond feeling over agriculture. Then everything else was just I had to combine my science, because I already knew from a long time ago that I want to be a scientist. Just that I wasn't sure which field I was going to fall in. So then I found science and agriculture. So now those two combined, now they gave me soil sciences, which I am currently doing right now.
So that's great. You mentioned that your mom played a heavy role on the whole agriculture aspect. I actually relate to your story, even with me. Like, it was like, come and water my garden. Come and, was it that sort of a thing? Come and dig.
You're playing there a nice game of soccer, and she just calls you. Lonwabo, come and water my crops. Well, that wasn't nice, but as time goes on, I enjoyed it, so I just do it voluntarily now.
And then now you look back and you're like, yo, thanks, Mom. You knew something.
Yeah. She did a great job.
She did. Okay, so for somebody who's like, what is soil science? How do you even get into soil science? Because you mentioned that you wanted to be a scientist, right? But you weren't sure which type. So how did you then decide? Okay, apart from the fact that you had agriculture, but I'm assuming that you didn't know that there was even a discipline called soil science. So how do you get into that specific discipline and be like, oh my word, I'm a scientist of the soil? So take us through that journey.
Oh yeah. Okay. So basically, when I got to varsity, I didn't apply for any soil sciences or anything, but I applied for. I got accepted for applied chemistry, right? So I started in Westfield in 2014. That was my first year in 2014. Then I did applied chemistry. So all the all the modules are the same for first years now. But now, when I was in the lab and stuff, so I actually noticed that being inside, being in the lab all the time, every day of my life, I don't think that would be the life I would like to live. Then then I saw. We were in these combined things. I'm not sure what was it in 2014 though. So then I met someone who says she was doing soil sciences and environmental sciences in Pietermaritzburg. So then I got to ask her what actually is soil science, what you do. Then she explained it to me, and right there I knew I had to transfer to Pietermaritzburg. Yeah.
Wow, what a story. I love that. So you came back and you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Did you start from scratch, or you just picked up those modules?
No, I picked up those modules because the introductory modules for first years, like in life sciences, they are the same. I think you're familiar with that. So they are the same everywhere. So I just had to come and do my second year in 2015 in Pietermaritzburg. I think we were on the same 217 class. in 2015.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yes.
Oh, man, that module. For me, personally, I am so glad I left soil science. I don't want to say anything, but now you've brought me in here. I really applaud you guys who do the soil aspect because, I'm sure you can attest to that. People just assume it's just dirt. That's all there is. But there's soil physics, soil chemistry, soil what?
Soil biology, everything.
Right?
It's just multidisciplinary. It's multidisciplinary. So everything is there.
Yeah.
Everything is
okay.
there.
So it's quite complex. So let's give an overview for somebody who's like, okay, you two are saying Anne is saying she doesn't like it. Lonwabo says this is his thing. So just before we get into exactly what you're doing, give us an overview for somebody who has no idea about anything about soil science. What exactly does a soil scientist do, or what does it involve?
Oh yeah. Basically, a soil scientist is just someone who is the primary leader of any crop that is about to be put to the soil, because everything else comes from the soil. So soil is just your primary, how can I put it? But it's just your primary source of life, I can say so. So now, when you have soils, then you can do anything and produce anything from the soil. So basically what you do is just to make sure that the soil that you have is actually healthy and conducive for any crop to grow in.
No, I understand. Yeah. That's fantastic. So soil is life for all the people who think it's just dirt. There's way more to that.
Yes.
There's way more to that. Okay, so currently you are a master's student, like you mentioned, at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and your research is based on the construction of farm typologies and assessing the fertility gradient and nutrient variation in smallholder farmers in KwaZulu-Natal, specifically the areas of Mbumbulu and Msinga. So can you tell us a bit more about this project, how you got involved, and why is it so important?
Okay, well, this project started in 2018 when I was doing my honors, because I did a double major degree, which was 3 years, which was hydrology and soil science, right? And then I shifted into soil sciences for my honors, and that's where I did my first project. My first project was I had to do fertility gradients for what era was that? Swaiman, yes. At that time, so it was Swaimani. So basically, what I wanted to understand is the complexity or the heterogeneity of soils in every aspect. So they depend on a number of factors. So your climate, your parent material, your management, your crop management and soil management, everything there. So now I was actually interested in knowing how does it differ, because usually at home you'll see that there is a home garden, right, which is next to the household. Then there are other fields which are far from your household. Then now, in terms of allocation of resources to these fields, it's not the same. They're different now. Now I wanted to actually see the gap and know how it could actually be leveled, you see, or be closed, that gap between in terms of management and nutrient availability between these two sites.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So the soil closest to the soil will be different from different places. So like you said, the one closest to your house and the one by the field. So what type of things? So that would affect the yield possibly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, that would affect the yield, and to the core, it will affect the nutrients in the soil. So different soil types have different nutrient holding capacity level. Okay, yeah, if I may just put it that way, they have different nutrient holding capacities. So if you have maybe a deep soil, deep red soil, will have different nutrient holding capacity than a dark, shallow soil. All those things. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's so interesting. And it's quite fascinating how small things like that really impacts, like you said, the nutrients, and some of us would not know, and other people in agriculture. Yes. So you're working specifically with smallholder farmers?
Yes. Because it's
okay.
For them, it's one. They lack sort of technical support from, let's say, and they actually farm using indigenous knowledge now. So one way or the other, you must, whether you are in the scientific field or you are in the let's say in the indigenous knowledge field. So these things have to be combined together, and you actually see there's no much difference of what I could say. Let's say I'll do a soil analysis in the lab, and someone who's knowledgeable about their soils will just look at the type of vegetation that grows from that bare soil and will tell you that now this soil is fertile, this soil is infertile, all those things. So now for us as scientists, it's just verifying those things and documenting them, and to be able to for future generations to actually know that it's not that my grandmother there in the rural areas who just decides, no, let me just mulch my garden, let me put some grass on top of my potatoes in the field. They actually know what they're doing. It's just they're adding more nutrients to the soil, but in an organic way. So
definitely indigenous knowledge is very, very important. And just hearing you speak, we can also just hear the amount of knowledge that you've gained over the time where you were this young boy who didn't want to help your mom in the garden and and where you are now as a master's candidate. So one might assume that the journey was smooth, right? People looking from the outside. I like how you laugh, because then it makes it easy for me to bring this part in. You mentioned actually that it actually wasn't always easy, and you were open enough to share that you actually failed one of the introductory modules. So can you tell us more about this?
That year was full of surprises, because one, on my first year I didn't have any funding, right? One. So and then when I started my second year, then that's when I got funding. Now the year that I actually got funding is the year that I actually failed. so I failed the introductory module, Soil Science 217 now, to be precise. and it was a prerequisite module for the second semester module. So if you fail that module, it means automatically you've added another year to your degree, right? So this says that I didn't finish my degree in time, but I think from failing that module, and it helped me to realize that sometimes failure is not actually failing because you're failing. Sometimes it's a lesson. It's a lesson that you need in terms of discipline, in terms of actually being true to yourself and knowing what you want to achieve. So that failing that module helped me a lot. I don't think I'll actually be in this area and time of my life if I hadn't failed that module. So it added a lot of character in me, right? because for someone else who, for just like you didn't like that module, so and having to fail it and go back to it because I had an option of continuing with other things and just letting that soil science go, but I went back to it and I passed it, and from that semester I've never got another sub. Oh yes, I did get some and the following semester. Yeah, the following semester of that year. But since 2015, I've never got a sub. So everything was just.
Yeah. Oh, like you said, I like how you said that it really teaches you and it actually makes you better. I think sometimes one might see failure as this is the end, but if you channel the energy correctly, it can make you better. And you know what they say? Those successful people are the ones who keep on failing. So I love how you speak to that a lot. So before we wrap up and we get into the final points of the show, you and I both know, okay, South Africa, the unemployment rate is pretty high, even more so for the youth. As of 2021, earlier this year, it was about 46%, and due to this unrest that happened in some parts of South Africa, I'm sure this is obviously going to increase. So for you, when you're thinking about your future prospects, right? How do you consider that? Do you aspire then to be like, I'm going to pursue this PhD or postgrad further to PhD or postdoc, go into academia, or do you want to go into these roles where you're actually in that working sector?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Because I think I've been fortunate enough to actually be in this position that I am right now, and for me, I would say, yes, I want to go for PhD. Yes, I'm definitely going for PhD.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just say so. I'm definitely going for PhD, but I think somehow I need to actually feel the workplace environment. Though there the job opportunities are very scarce here in South Africa, but whenever an opportunity arises, I think someone just should just grab the bull with the horns and actually move with it. And yes, and also I think it's important for the country to actually invest more on research, because research is what actually gives us a prospect of the future and see how things could get could they get worse, could they get a bit lighter, could they be better, you know. So if they don't invest on research, then we're definitely still going to be set back as a country. And you, as you know, whenever you're collecting data, you collect more data than you actually need. And that data, the more data that you have, and the easier it is to actually make more informed decisions and actually create employment opportunities in every different aspect of the economic cycle.
No, spot on. I agree. I agree that there needs to be more in the research and the development side of things. And I hope you get to, you are, though, even though you aren't mentioning the company, you are getting that taste. And even though, like you said, that it's not the way that you'd want it, but you are sort of getting that taste of the working life, and come through and join what they call the red gown gang and come and join our struggle to this red gown when you are ready.
Well, we're striving for
Yes.
solutions. We want solutions. We want solutions. So we're not just pursuing these red gowns for the sake of fun and to post pictures on social media, but we actually want to drive change. So all the research that we actually input always has an a positive output to help more people that are not fortunate to be in a position where they could actually do themselves the research. Yeah, because research is expensive, So
and in the process, it's African researchers who are finding solutions to African problems, which is very, very important. So as we wrap up, this has been a really nice chat, and if somebody's maybe inspired by your story, well, not maybe, I really hope they are. What sort of advice would you give them then? Just, it can be general life advice, or it can be about getting into this field of science.
No, I think it's best if you just whenever you want something, go for it. There will always be challenges. There will always be challenges, but just go for it. Whatever you want in life, you can always achieve by going straight for it and not going around it or dreaming about it, but you actually not doing anything about it. You just have to put in the hard work. And I cannot lie to anyone. It's not easy, but it's doable. So I think that's all I can say.
Yeah, fantastic. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. I had a great time.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be actually in this podcast, and I hope I inspire some to actually join us in tackling food security in this country and the entire continent, because we need to stand up for ourselves as Africans and do what should be done. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, spot on. And to everybody else who's tuned in, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl and with an E. Until next time, goodbye.
Ayo.